We should be populating in a minute.
I see it. Do I have to move that? I see it. Okay.
Oh, just got my notification. We are live. All right. Let's navigate over to the Facebook page so I can see all the friendly
Friends and foes alike.
smiling faces coming on here.
Will you be able to see questions if people have them?
I will. And for everyone logging on, tonight's guest is not shy at all.
I've heard that.
Because you can tell you that, yeah, he's known for sharing his opinions and not being afraid to tell you what he thinks. So if you have a question, go ahead and ask it in the comments or share it through one of Save Jersey's other social media channels. And maybe we'll get some time. I can ask one.
Great. Yeah, questions, comments, criticisms, we take it all.
Absolutely. If you want to weigh in on who has better hair, you can do that.
I was going to talk about the beard, but you know.
Well, your beard's got it all over my beard.
I'm showing a lot more gray, Matt. I can tell you that.
Well, I'm catching up. You can see a little bit there. But look, I mean, I can't grow it in here. That's why you've never seen me with one before, really. Because this is my deficit as a man, that the hair does not go this high here.
But see, it's almost a hipster style that you're working. So you almost shouldn't tell anybody that. Just say by design. That's it. By design, baby.
You're right. I should pretend that this is intentional.
This is what I do. What are you talking about?
Yeah. Good evening, Maureen. Glad you logged on. Good evening, NJ. It's always a good evening in NJ. It's always an expensive evening in NJ, but.
And getting worse.
Yeah, it just always seems like what we're really doing is talking about how fast the car is speeding towards the cliff, right?
Well, and it's everything, like tonight. So my wife, Jody, and I were at an event for our friend Krista Phillips, great assembly member in Bergen County, had an event at his home. Kristen Corrado was there, and Robert Auth and Kevin Rooney, just a good group of people. Jack Zisa, Bergen County chair. But on the way, I mean, first of all, it took me more than 2 hours to get there from Princeton. And we discovered what the problem was. We're on 287 North, and there is a line of construction trucks with the arrow, and it's all coming down. And this is probably 6:35, right middle of rush hour, all careening into one lane. By the time you get to the end, it was a street sweeper truck cleaning the shoulder. I don't even know what to say about that. How is that even possible that that's okay? Like what level of bureaucracy are we at that somebody okayed that? Or literally is no one in charge?
And who was complaining about the dirty shoulder?
Who was complaining about it? Right.
Of all the things that need to be swept. I mean, I'm not saying I don't want our roads to look nice, but
right. But
of all the problems, the bottle hanging out of the shoulder is not the number one.
This whole common sense tour that we're doing, Matt, right? We've been all over the state. I'm putting 100, 150 miles a day on my car. It reminded me of how much I hated the commute when I used to drive from Princeton to Morristown every day. I'm like, oh, right. Like I'm right back in it. Just hours. The state isn't as big as you would think. It's the traffic.
That's what it is. There's no easy way to get to certain points. Like when I'm a South Jersey guy. You're originally from Camden County. I'm in Camden County. Trying to go to Ocean, very challenging because you have to take that back road through the woods. Yep. It's a lovely ride, but it's not the quickest way to get anywhere. Same thing if you want to go up to Morris County from South Jersey.
Right. I spend a lot of time on 42 heading into South Jersey, and a lot of time on 295, 287, 80, 78, 15. I mean, and they all have their own challenges. But the worst is if you have a meeting in Red Bank and you're in Princeton, because there's literally no straight shot. You either have to go all the way south to 195 and shoot over, or you've got to go north to 18 and then shoot down. Either way, it's an hour and 20 minutes. No matter
Maybe
which,
it's one of the reasons Red Bank's such a nice spot because it's inaccessible.
Oh,
at least from this direction.
It's like the Georgetown of New Jersey. Right. So Georgetown, when we first got married, Jody and I lived in Washington, and you don't realize it until you're there. but the subways just don't come out. The metro doesn't come out that far. It was by design. They're like, we're going to keep our little enclave. Well, the problem is, then you got to drive everywhere or the bus, and it takes, it could take you 40 minutes to get to downtown. So Red Bank's like our little enclave of that. It's a nice town, though. Great restaurant.
It's a nice town, but I like that the mini Georgetown,
right?
Minus the university plus the beach.
Yeah.
So let's see. We've got some folks in here now. I think. Well, let me back up here for a second. So, welcome, Save Jerseyans, to another episode of Save Jersey Live. We haven't done one in a while, and I don't have a good excuse, so I'm not going to make one. Life's just been busy. So, I did promise that we were going to restart it in the fall. I originally intended we were going to do it in September, maybe even a little bit before Labor Day, but that's what happened. So, my pledge to you is we're going to do it once a week now through Election Day, which for those of you that learned math from the NJEA, that's 5 weeks between now and election. We have 5 Thursdays. And my intention is every week to bring you someone who's extremely consequential in New Jersey politics. Not necessarily a candidate, although we plan on bringing some candidates on, but someone that's actually actively engaged in the conversation both this year and beyond. Because New Jersey, increasingly, despite ourselves, is becoming a consequential battleground in a lot of national debates, whether it be the right for freedom of parents to have control of their children's lives in schools, or whether it be the larger pushback against some of the Democrats' excesses with their spending and taxation. So who better to kick off with as we have this conversation than my friend of many years, Bill Spadea. You recognize him by his voice, even if you don't recognize that handsome face. The one guy in the state with better hair than I have, and he has a lot of it. He is, for those who don't know, but I can possibly imagine anyone watching this doesn't, he's the morning drive host for NJ 1015. He spent his years in the political trenches, and lately, because he's a glutton for punishment, he's founded a group. Because I'll give you, look, you always put your money where your mouth is, literally. And you've been telling people for years on your program. And by the way, yes, somebody said NJA pukey face. Couldn't have said it better. That's what sometimes only an emoji can express it. And that's a great example. So you for years have been telling your audience, I'm digging in, I'm inviting you to dig in with me. Now you're taking it to the next level. You've started the Common Sense Club, and you already didn't sleep. But now you're spending all this time traversing the state, meeting with Republican groups, but also a lot of non-Republicans to talk about things that are fundamentally common sense. But I don't want to bury the lead. Why don't you tell me what you're up to and what the goal is?
You know what? Thanks, Matt. And you're right. For years, I've been talking about digging in, and I tell people I am literally digging in. We added on to our house to invite my mother-in-law into our home after my father-in-law passed away. So we were literally digging a new foundation, putting up new walls and saying, I'm not going anywhere. So I look at it this way. We've got this huge audience. Right now, we're the largest audience in the state. And what is so important about it is that a third of my audience are Democrats, a third are independents, and a third are Republicans. So to your point, yes, I said, how do you take this audience and translate it into political action to actually make the state better? You know, for years, you look at media folks and talking heads, and it's a great way to vent out frustration. But the question is, how do you turn that into action? So we launched the Common Sense Club, and I wasn't sure where it was going to go. Like, was this thing really going to work? But apparently, if you build it, they really will come. We are, as of today, up to more than 84,000 members. So it blew up. We're adding 84,000. And what's important about it is this is a brand new list, right? So this is happening just in the past few months. Every week now, we're at a clip of 2,400 people joining. So I put it out to not just Republican clubs, but veterans groups and youth groups and church groups and anybody out there that had a diverse group of New Jerseyans from all walks of life, all economic backgrounds, all religious backgrounds. And I said, hey, I'll come and speak, and we'll do it for free. You can turn it into a fundraiser. We'll put it on our list, and we'll energize people about this message that we can actually save the state. And it took off. So we are literally around the state 2-3 times, sometimes in one day. I'm putting a couple hundred miles on the car every day. It is a huge state. The traffic is real. Route 1, 287. I was telling you before we went live, Matt, that I'm on 287 tonight. My wife, Jody, and I are headed to an event with our friend Krista Phillips, who is a great member of the Assembly, true common sense thinker in Wyckoff. And between getting to Bergen County from 206, where I get on 287, flying through, flying rush hour, and then boom, about 5 miles in, traffic at a dead stop, 3 lanes going into one, because there was a quarter mile of construction trucks, arrows pointing to get over right. At the end of it, a street cleaner. They were literally cleaning the shoulder. I mean, you can't make it up. So it's like big picture stuff, right? Not just the big issues, right? The issues of parental choice and small businesses. We hear this all the time. A third of the businesses closed during the lockdown to never reopen again. That's a horror show. This is, we've got a state that punishes entrepreneurs, that punishes families. We've got an out of control teachers union that gets in between parents and their kids. But, the more time I spend on the road with people, it's, believe it or not, less about the big issues and more about the little issues. They're like, why is the traffic so bad? Why is there a sinkhole getting onto 78 where they had to have emergency repairs on the on-ramp? What is going on that we can't get potholes fixed? How is it possible there are truck drivers that can't get their CDLs renewed because MVC doesn't function?
Well, you and I have talked about this before, both on and offline. We always hear from the Democrats every year in this state, because they won't defend the fact that we have high taxes, because there's no defending it. I mean, it is what it is. It's a fact. So right. What they usually say to us condescendingly is, well, you're getting such an amazing value for your investment. This is a premium community, New Jersey. And if you want to have everything that New Jersey has to offer, well, then you better expect to pay for it. But it's simply not the case. And the pandemic really laid that bare, didn't it?
Well, it exposed hypocrisy and it exposed incompetence. Because if you look at states like Florida, Texas, South Dakota, Tennessee, the Carolinas, their opening transition was much easier and much faster than ours. Not only did they have governors that actually listened to some science and said, you know what, we're not seeing deaths among young people, get those schools open. We're not seeing deaths come from restaurants, get the restaurants open. They used facts and logic and open. But the government delivery system, I mean, I'm sure you're in the same boat I'm in. We've got friends that have made a lot of money. They look around, they're like, you know what, I love New Jersey, but if I go to Florida, I'm not going to pay a state income tax. I'm going to lower my tax burden. My property taxes are going to be cut in some cases by 2/3. What am I staying here for? They go to Florida. The number one thing I've heard from folks that have moved to Florida, forgetting, God forbid, the natural disaster and the people that suffer with that, but I'll get to that in a minute, because that's another example of competent government. Ron DeSantis was out ahead of that storm 5 days. I mean, very sad to lose 100 souls. At the same time, the hurricane was in the path of more than 2 million people that were effectively evacuated in time. So very strong competence in government. But one of the—
You just rebuilt a bridge in 3 days.
Did you see that? I saw that tweet today. 3 days, bridge is back.
The interchange down here in South Jersey, they've been working on that for 13 years.
That when I drive 295 south and get on the 42, when you're going toward the AC Expressway or toward 55 to Millville, not only is the roadway, looks like there were mortar shelling that morning, but the construction crews have been out there since I can remember. And I can remember a long time ago, because Jody and I, when we first moved back to New Jersey, lived in Sea Isle, then bought our first house in Williamstown. So that was my commute. And I'm like, wait a minute, Misery. They have literally still, that construction project is still going on. It's amazing. But I was going to say, the number one thing I hear in Florida is, hey, I was in and out of motor vehicles, got my Florida license in 12 minutes, 13 minutes, 15 minutes. Imagine doing that in Jersey. No chance.
Do you like Ron DeSantis as a 2024 prospect? I know we're a couple lifetimes away from that nominating process, even though it's going to come up quick. But, as someone that was a leading Trump supporter in this state, do you think DeSantis might be a guy who can pick up the mantle and carry the party forward?
I think that the dynamics and the demographics and the desire of voters has changed in the past 2 years. I think if you go back to 2016, even go back to 2012, we were having an ideological argument over philosophy, over what ifs and what could be. And there was very little conversation about parental rights, about small business protection, and about competence in government. And I think now you're saying, well, wait a minute. If I look at the competence level, you look at Phil Murphy's going to run for president. I don't think he's credible. However, to give the governor some credit, not that this our audience is going to want to hear anything positive about Murphy.
We just lost everyone.
There they go. They're out. He was smart enough to move left. And again, I'm looking at it purely political. The damage he's done in this state is not repairable in some families, in some communities. It's horrible. He ought to be indicted, not running for president. But that said, he smartly moved as far to the left as possible to box out the Gavin Newsoms, the Governor Wolf, the potential of Andrew Cuomo making a comeback. And he said, nope, it's going to be me. I'm on the left. It was a smart move because he has the opportunity now to capture that Bernie Sanders wing. Now on the right, I think if Donald Trump runs, he kind of takes all the oxygen out of the room. And I don't know that DeSantis runs against him, because the prospect would be, if Trump runs and he wins in 24, he's only a one-term president. And in 28, Ron DeSantis, young man, incredible resume. I mean, forgetting even his competence and how he runs the government. He's done two things in Florida that Republicans in New Jersey need to take note of. Number one, he was able to reopen within a matter of weeks and restart the economy right away. And with that, lay down the law that kids were not going to be picked on at the local level based on vaccine discrimination, based on wearing masks, et cetera. He crushed the sexual education. He's going after the CRT nonsense. So he was competent and strong in his leadership. But the other thing that he did was, by leading by example and actually bringing in experts. I remember, and you probably remember this too, there was a YouTube video that got taken down right away. He brought in Martin Kulldorff, the famous doctor from Harvard, Jay Bhattacharya from Stanford, Sunetra Gupta from Oxford. I mean, literally some of the sharpest minds in the medical fields. And he went around and talked about vaccines and masks and social distancing, and got his answer based in science and reopened the state. Because of that leadership and him going against the polls at the time, now you have more Republicans registered in Florida than Democrats. So the guy is successful from an ideological perspective, from a government management perspective, and from a leadership and courage perspective. And that's what we need in Jersey.
I don't think that Republicans this cycle, and including in New Jersey, where, as you have correctly pointed out, horrible management of COVID from the beginning, very few things you could point to in the Murphy administration's early response that made any sense. They just named a building after Nurse Persicelli, who shares responsibility for 9,000, 10,000 nursing home deaths.
Yes.
Absolutely insane. I don't know why Republicans aren't talking more about it.
I think part of it is, Matt, that you've got some stars, in my opinion, in the legislature whose voices have been shut down. They can't get a word in because the leadership on the Republican side, honestly, to be candid, has been soft and weak throughout the last few years. I mean, guys like John Bramnick, goes from the Republican leader in the assembly, gets a promotion to the Senate, did nothing, entertained no conversation. He and I have had many personal conversations, texting, conversations on the phone. I've had him on the radio a million times. Did nothing to push back on the governor's lockdown, because at the end of the day, guys like Bramnick supported the lockdowns.
He just voted for Matt Placken, one of 3 Republican senators, Murphy's new AG, who was right at the center of these policies.
Yeah. So I think the challenge is that the first step is to empower those Republicans who are actually Republicans. Like, you don't need to break the party. You don't need to attack the party. You need to empower the right people in the party. And that's
what is a Republican to Bill Spadea, which is the question I think I'm going to ask everyone this month.
That's a great question.
I mean, you and I have had many conversations about this over the years of Chasing News offline, and it's changed. I think some things are still the same at the core of our philosophy, but how would you describe a Republican in 2020?
Well,
if someone asked you.
That's a really good question, and I think I would answer it this way. Number one, someone that recognizes the function of government is to serve the people who pay for the government. That to me is number one. The function of government is not to get jobs for your friends, line the pockets of your potential future employers so you get a nice cushy landing when you get out. the function of government has to be to provide service to the people that are paying the bills. That to me is number one.
That's the populist twist of the whole thing.
Well, I think,
logical, but
I think the problem, Matt, is that, and maybe this is a longer answer to your question than you wanted, but I tend to talk, as you know. If you go back to even the Reagan years, right? Ronald Reagan was a competent president. He had competence. He understood the function of government. He was smart enough to vilify government because government was truly, at that time, the enemy. Government then became the enemy again when we saw the lockdowns and COVID and all the nonsense we're seeing in the schools, et cetera. So to me, a Republican recognizes that it's the institutions that need to change, and the people tend to fall victim to bad institutions. I'll give you an example. A Republican doesn't attack teachers. A Republican attacks the corrupt leadership of the NJEA and recognizes, as Ronald Reagan recognized, that people living under communism were victims. Teachers in New Jersey are victims of the NJEA. So a Republican, to me, points out, a Republican can have a conversation and not tick off every party line just to get along. But a Republican, to me, stands up to their own caucus and says, wait a minute, there's common sense that we're missing here. You know, you can't horse trade away parental rights to grab a little piece of power in a committee hearing. And that's what these guys do. To me, that is the antithesis of what a Republican is. A Republican believes in competent government, limited government, and strength and growth in our economy. A Republican understands that the backbone of the economy is a flourishing small business, Main Street group of people who have mom and pop shops up and down the stores, up and down the Main Street, where they know their customers and there's interaction. So that to me is number one. It's not about shutting mom and pop stores and letting the big boys come in. You know, how does Home Depot stay open? And I'm not singling them out or knocking them. How do they stay open and your local retailer gets shut? Does COVID not hurt you in the Home Depot, but it hurts you in a small shop? Absolutely ridiculous. But beyond that, a Republican also recognizes that you have to have the strength and the courage to point certain things out, even though you're going to be attacked for it. So to me, standing up for law enforcement, there are a lot of Republicans that are afraid to do that. They're afraid to go against bail reform. They're afraid to call out Platkin and the rest of the cast of characters back to Graywall when he was the attorney general, afraid to call them out for fear of being called a racist or a bigot. A Republican stands on principle and courage and says, I'm going to say it because it's true. And eventually, well, you're either going to throw me out of office or you're going to promote me. That's how you got to look at it. It's a long answer to your question.
No, but you hit the nail on the head. You either in this day and age believe that government exists to serve the people and is accountable to the people, or not. And we have plenty of examples in New Jersey of people who fall in that or not category. Tom Malinowski, Josh Gottheimer, certainly Governor Murphy, their legion. Here's a little bit of breaking news for you. So I'm watching the Twitter, which I know you're a fan of, and you know that Joe Biden is in New Jersey tonight. Actually, he's at a fundraiser at Murphy's house. John Bon Jovi's there. They're having the only traffic
worse than what I went through on 287 is in Middletown tonight.
That's exactly right. I'm sure our good friend out there tonight is having a heck of an evening.
Right.
Biden apparently at the fundraiser said that Putin is not joking about tactical nuclear weapons and that Armageddon risk at highest level since Cuban Missile Crisis. So saber rattling in Middletown tonight out there on the Navasink. 2022, it looks like it's going to be at least a part of referendum on this guy, who, other than doing what he can do to try to bring about World War III, doesn't have many positive accomplishments to his name. How do you see 2022 playing out nationally and here in New Jersey? Do you see the red wave coming off the coast?
No doubt. I see that, but there's an important nuance here, because Republicans have to understand this, that you also, to be a Republican, have to have the courage to call out how the administration is manipulating to drag us into a potential global conflict. The manipulation is they want you to believe that all of your suffering in America is because of Vladimir Putin. They are ignoring the very real threat of the Chinese communists, who are not just a real threat, abroad, but a threat right here at home with their the spies, and the fact that I thought I was reading the Babylon Bee when I read yesterday that the Chinese communists opened a police station in Manhattan. I literally thought it was a spoof. There's no way that's true. I had to fact check it. I'm going around different, and I'm like, that's really true. So when you look at what's happening in Ukraine, the same government, the same Congress, the same administration that in 1 week gave $48 billion to the corrupt Zelensky regime in Kiev, forgetting Putin's aggression and all these other things that, by the way, would have never happened under Donald Trump. That's why it didn't. They then turned down a relief package for restaurants across the country. They voted up $48 billion for Ukraine. They voted down $48 billion for our restaurants and small businesses. Unbelievable. Because of things like that, if Republicans have the courage to speak truth and say that we got to have American tax dollars invested for American taxpayers, I think you're seeing a red wave across the board. In New Jersey, I think Tom Kean beats Malinowski. I think Frank Pallotta has a shot against Gottheimer. That's a tougher race. I would love to see Paul DeGroot beat Mikey Sherrill. Mikey Sherrill is one of these folks that, kind of pretends she's a conservative, and of course she's not. And Bob Healy against Andy Kim. We'll see. But those are, look, it'd be great to see them all win. Darius Mayfield and Billy Prempa, Sue Kiley. Sue Kiley, I hear, is running closer to Pallone than anybody first.
Everyone I talk to, which you always have to be careful because, right, the people in this industry that talk the most often know the least. But that's the race that I'm being told by the insiders, by the people that poll every day. Pay attention to that one. If it really ends up being a red wave, Frank Pallone might finally be out of the job. And that would be glorious.
He's a good candidate.
Yes.
He's a good candidate.
No, absolutely. Well, I don't want to keep you too long because as you started out talking about, you're on the road. And you and I, as you also pointed out, could do this forever because that's what we do. We talk. What are you going to do? So sue us. Where do we find out more about the Common Sense Club?
So go to the website, go to commonsenseclub.org, sign up. You don't have to give any money to be a part of the organization. We would love it if you did, but we want to have you let your voice be heard. commonsenseclub.org.
The great Bill Spadea, I appreciate you making some time tonight for us, my friend. Probably did you a service, though, too, because before you get onto the road, you need to relax a little bit.
Exactly.
That street sweeper got your blood pressure up, and I want you to drive and see me down.
Thanks, Matt.
Bill Spadea, thanks for joining us. And everyone, thank you for joining us tonight on Save Jersey Live. I want to thank our sponsor every week, Affordable Energy for NJ. We'll share the link. If you haven't heard of the Energy Master Plan in New Jersey, something Bill Spadea has talked about quite a bit on his program and elsewhere. It starts with you losing your gas range in your house, right? That's really going to affect the millennials and the Gen Zers because we love cooking our yuppie foods. But across the board, it was going to radically change our lives, all in the name of junk science. And the price tag for families in this state, astronomical. It's going to be a life-changing event in New Jersey if we don't stop it. So head on over to their website to get the latest on that fight. And we'll be back soon with more Save Jersey Live every week. For now, stay safe, stay sane, and keep doing everything you can to fight for New Jersey. It's worth it. And dig in, too, while you're at it.
Thanks, Matt.
Night, everyone. Thanks, Phil.
Okay. Talk soon.